You're listening to dialectradio.co.uk.
Well, it's all happening over in Ukraine at the moment, but if you want to, you can get a board game and you can play it all out on your living room table. The designer of the game, his name is Joseph Miranda, and I spoke to him this week on the line from California. Could you introduce yourself and tell us how you got into wargame design, Joseph?
Well, my name is Joseph Miranda. I'm currently the editor of Modern War magazine, and I have a couple hundred wargame designs to my credit. I first got into wargaming back when I was in high school when I saw these boxes in the hobby stores from a company called Avalon Hill, and they seemed to open up an entirely new world. So I started playing them, and like everybody else, I started doing my own variants. And what got me into wargame design was when Keith Poulter asked me to do a wargame on Nicaragua. And so I sat down and knocked out basically a simulation of the Nicaraguan insurgency. I have to say simulation. The Nicaragua game as a game was okay. It was more of a number crunching exercise. But I then got off into other games, and over the years I've refined the technique a lot, and that's what's brought me to where I am today.
Okay, tell us about some of the games you're most proud of, maybe back in the 70s, 80s that you've designed.
Well, I like Trajan. This was a simulation of the Roman Emperor's conquest of what's today the Middle East. And the way I did the game was to do it from the perspective of a Roman commander. So what you do is you have a map that's essentially based on an old Ptolemaic map of the Middle East, so it's got a really weird geography. And the combat systems and everything else reflect Roman-era warfare as opposed to what we think of warfare today. So you can get yourself in some really weird situations, and you have to kind of think like you were alive 1,900 years ago. More recently, I did Battle for Baghdad, which is a multiplayer simulation of the struggle to gain control of the capital of Iraq in recent years. And that's proven to be a lot of fun. And it's played a lot at conventions, and I've even seen it played in higher-level Army headquarters, so it's gotten around.
Well, you say fun, Joseph, but, I mean, there's a war crimes aspect to this as well, isn't it? Because a lot of people are pointing their fingers at Bush and Blair and people like that and saying, well, that war was illegal. Right.
This is wargaming. We're just gamers here.
But don't you think, to a certain extent, the real military do these sort of games, and that with something like Iraq, they would probably have gamed it beforehand, and if they think they can win, I mean, this gives them the impetus to go ahead and do something that they might not otherwise do. So in a way, you're kind of encouraging them.
Well, I wish I had that kind of power. Actually, wargaming has often been ignored. Prior to the war in Vietnam, the U.S. actually did a series of war games called the Sigma War Games, and they demonstrated that the U.S. strategy for Vietnam was going to fail. And these games were ignored, and the strategy that was used was essentially the losing strategy in the game. So I think the same thing might have been true for Iraq. Had they paid more attention to the gamers, they might have seen that, well, wait a minute, this isn't going to work out the way we think it's going to work out.
What makes a good game, then?
Well, in my view, it has to put you into the mindset of the people who originally fought the original campaign. So you actually have to see things from the standpoint of whether it's a Napoleonic general or an ancient Roman general or whatever. And so a lot of the devices in the game, like the cards and the random events, play into that. They manipulate you into thinking that, aha, this is the challenge we have to face. And it's not the challenge we'd have to face today where, again, today, if you look at it, information warfare has become a big deal. In World War II, you had industrial warfare, Napoleonic warfare, you had the rise of nationalism. So all these things can be simulated by cards.
Is it something that really is a bit sexist? Because women don't play these games, Joseph, do they?
Well, some women do, but if women want to play, it's a great market we need to get into.
Why is it, do you think, that this is something which is very blokey, boyish?
Well, that's sort of getting beyond the game design aspects, but historically, most armies have been made up of men, and war is the ultimate game for men, I imagine.
Some of these modern conflicts can be quite sensitive, can't you? Do you think there's a sensitivity around game makers in releasing these to the public, although maybe the military might be interested?
I don't know. People design some of the most bizarre games out there. There are games out there on drug running. There are games out there on terrorism. A lot of times people want the challenge of the curious thrill there. It's like reading a Tom Clancy novel. You know, you want to be projected into a different world.
I can remember years ago reading a book called Game of Nations by Miles Copeland, who was himself an intelligence officer, and he said that actually the whole idea of wargaming is very big in the military. It's just really only a part of it which ever gets released to the public. Is that something you'd agree with? Do you think that's true?
Yes, that's true. There's a lot of wargaming done, but bear in mind it's not the kind of wargaming that board wargaming would think of as wargaming. It's more seminar-type games.
And what about computers? Because the computer age could possibly take a lot of the legwork out of playing war games on the board, sort of on the table kind of thing. So has computers changed it for the better or the worse?
Well, I've done some computer game design. The advantage to board gaming is that it's there on the table in front of you. It's physical. You can manipulate it. And that's what people like. They like having this whole thing wrapped up in a box. They like the fact that they can sit there and make up their own counters. They can rewrite the rules. So board gaming is still going strong. Another problem with computer gaming is that the screens really aren't large enough to really give you enough feel for the map. So board games, when you can put them up on the kitchen table or spread them out on the floor, they're still going strong.
Looking at Ukraine, am I right in thinking that you've actually designed a game about Ukraine?
Yes, this was about 10 or 15 years ago. It was for One Small Step. The game dealt with a Russian invasion of the Ukraine in the post-Cold War era.
Now, for someone that's worked on that scenario, what are your thoughts about what's going on in the world today? Is there anything we can learn by playing your game?
Well, what we do in my games is that we try and have all the non-material dimensions. So we have information warfare, we have guerrilla warfare, we have people in the streets. So you realize that there's this whole spectrum of conflict. It's not just simply about people shooting at people.
But I mean,
and actually, I am working on a couple of things dealing with the Ukraine coming up. And again, it's going to have all these non-material dimensions. I mean, certainly being able to put 100,000 people in the public square is worth an armored brigade these days. Much more, actually.
Well, why is that? Because obviously they can't. Most of those people won't be armed, Joseph. You know, are you saying that actually information warfare is becoming more powerful nowadays than armies?
Yes, if you can control opinion, you can control whether or not the war will happen, and what the public opinion about it is. I mean, this was true historically. I mean, during the Cold War, you had all sorts of propaganda going on, but today, given the whole dominance of public life by electronic information, it's impossible to escape it. It's like you're fighting in the Matrix, so you might as well learn to fight on that front.
With the experience of your game again, just remind us of the title.
On the Ukraine?
In the Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah, the game is called Ukraine. It's done by One Small Step Games. We're going to be doing an update on it.
Okay. Just imagine you are playing it now. What would you be doing if you were the West, looking at what's actually going on in the real world for a change? Well,
I think it's extremely doubtful that we'll see NATO marching into the Ukraine. If there is an attempt to influence things, it will be done through information operations or manipulating non-governmental organizations, and that's where the real struggle is going to become. And of course, the Russians are showing themselves to be very adept at this. They have conducted cyber warfare, and they apparently can get people out there, paramilitaries out there in the streets fighting for them. So this whole other front that's going on.
I mean, are the West the good guys and the Russians the bad guys? Is it really as simple as that?
Well, I'm not going to give a political opinion here. I like to think of myself as sort of a detached observer here. Certainly, people have been struggling for the Ukraine since the days of the Scythians, and this is not going to be the end of this struggle there.
Also, in your game, Ukraine, the idea of information warfare, IOPS, information operations, how do you actually bring that into the game? How does it work in the game?
Well, there are several ways I've done this. One is by using cards. So you have a card representing different kinds of information operations. Another is to have game pieces, which represent different kinds of information warfare technologies. So, for example, you might have pieces representing cyber war, others representing media access. others representing crashing enemy systems. So you're fighting on all fronts.